seen a helicopter that Yoo-Ji-ha was riding before. Yoo-Ji-ha looked very happy because he managed to infiltrate the enemy area and do his job well. Now he looks arrogant, and his confidence is greatly increased because he managed to trick his opponent there. The relics who listened to Yoo-Ji-ha bragging about himself were a little tired of hearing it. Yoo-Ji-ha quickly took his cell phone to give this good news to Seo Joo-Heon. But right after Yoo-Ji-ha sent his message to Seo Joo-Heon, he was visited by the rope relic who wanted Yoo-Ji-ha to restore the relic that was in the rope relic now. But it seems that the rope relic's plan is not going smoothly because it looks like Yoo-Ji-ha is rejecting it. With the rejection given by Yoo-Ji-ha, it makes the rope relic angry and he intends to crash the helicopter. It looks like the helicopter is starting to wobble and sway slightly due to the instability that occurs in it. The rope relic becomes impatient because it sees Yoo-Ji-ha, who instead wants to call Seo Joo-Heon to give the news now. Relic Rope had no other choice but to wait until Yoo-Ji-ha finished with his task of wanting to inform Seo Joo-Heon. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a high-rise building was seen there, and Seo Joo-Heon, who was inside her house, received good news from Yoo-Ji-ha through her cell phone. Seo Joo-Heon gave praise to Yoo-Ji-ha, who had managed to do his job well. Seo Joo-Heon told Yoo-Ji-ha to go back to New York because Seo Joo-Heon and others would soon follow to New York as well. Shortly after his call ended, Seo-Ah came to Seo Joo-Heon and asked about the mission given to Yoo-Ji-ha. Seo Joo-Heon then took a tool that looked like the remote. Everyone there was confused by the relic that was in Seo Joo-Heon's grasp, but Seo Joo-Heon just smiled and refused to answer them. It turned out that Seo Joo-Heon had previously done something with the relic dice that he got before, and with the remote control he can roll the dice until later the dice will bring up a curse according to the visible side. As soon as the button is pressed, the dice rotates, and looks Seo Kwon, who is surprised because something has happened inside him without his knowledge. Seo Joo-Heon then explained that Yoo-Ji-ha's mission was just to implant the dice to Seo Kwon, and after the dice rotated, a notification window appeared. Seo Joo-Heon smiled at the sight, and he could also tell what curse Seo Kwon would soon experience. Instantly, the people around Seo Kwon began to be affected and prepared to hurt Seo Kwon's nose. All the guards there moved closer to Seo Kwon and began to hit Seo Kwon's nose hard. Seo Kwon tried several times to stop the people who hit his nose, but they all did not listen to him. Yang Chen finally entered, and he saw that the situation in the room had turned into chaos. It seemed that Seo Joo-Heon pressed the button several times, and several curses and games began to appear as Seo Joo-Heon continued to press the button. Because basically the relic dice only contain punishments that used to be used for fun, it can be seen that Seo Kwon is still struggling to ward off the guards who continue to attack him, while Seo Joo-Heon continues to press the button and hopes that Seo Kwon will start reciting poetry. Seo Joo-Heon's pleasure had to stop because of the interruption of Seo-Ah. Immediately after that, Seo Joo-Heon immediately introduced Chloe to Julian and Irene, but it seemed that Chloe was not interested in it because she thought Julian was still the same person as before. Not only that, Chloe even mentioned Irene, who is now with them now. And Chloe's words managed to make Irene sad because she was seen as a bad person by Chloe. Seeing that, Seo Joo-Heon immediately ordered the relic she had previously used to cover her ears and put it in Irene's ear. Seo Joo-Heon slightly apologized to Irene because she had put the earplugs on. After that, Seo Joo-Heon explained to Chloe, if some people here did look like what she saw in her previous life, but not everyone from her previous life had the same memories and traits now. Even Seo-Ah there mentioned about Yoo-Ji-ha, who has not regained his memories of his previous life. Seo Joo-Heon explained that the relic he used has a small usage limit, and Seo Joo-Heon also felt that it was better for Yoo-Ji-ha not to regain his memories. Seo Joo-Heon also asked Chloe to remember how creepy and annoying Yoo Ji-ha was in the past and how bad Irene's character was, who was left behind by her family. And that's why Seo Joo-Heon chose not to restore the memories of all of them, because of some bad things that might happen when Seo Joo-Heon did that. Chloe suddenly interrupted and confirmed if Seo Joo-Heon was not on the same side as Pandora all this time. Chloe also explained if she would rethink if Seo Joo-Heon was really proven to be working with Pandora, because now she saw Seo Joo-Heon working with Irene. Chloe also said that she still adhered to the same principle, namely to eliminate the power of relics in this world. Julian then calmed Chloe a little if Seo Joo-Heon was not on the same side as Pandora now. Hearing those words, Julian made Chloe confident, and this got praise from Seo Joo-Heon. After he felt finished, Seo Joo-Heon called back the earplugs that were in Irene's ears too. Seo Joo-Heon then stood up and said that they had the next destination, which was the Tomb of Pride in France, but because of the tight security from Pandora, they could not go using the usual way because they had made a blacklist about Seo Joo-Heon. Chloe still did not understand why the Seo Joo-Heon team was now so famous that they had to be given something like a blacklist. Seo Joo-Heon then took out a newspaper in his hand, and it seemed that he had managed to find out something. It turned out that Pandora had sent someone quite troublesome, the King of Detection, to increase security there, and Seo Joo-Heon was also very sure that Pandora would bring other strong people besides the King of Detection to guard her, and they had to think of a plan to enter France without being detected by that woman. And with that, Seo Joo-Heon came up with the idea that they should work together with the excavation team associated with Pandora. They seemed to agree with the proposal, especially after Seo Joo-Heon thought carefully about his disguise. And as soon as Seo Joo-Heon mentioned that he would join the TBM, everyone there became surprised. Seo Joo-Heon then tried to convince them, but it seemed like Julian didn't accept, because why did they have to deal with TBM again and again? Seo even thought the same, but it seemed like Chloe didn't understand why they hated TBM so much. Seo Joo-Heon then tried to explain to them why they had to work with TBM. Seo Joo-Heon was seen trying to explain his reasons for choosing TBM as his partner in this mission. His first reason was because Seo Joo-Heon had to choose a team that would rarely be suspected by Pandora and trick the King of Detection. Because Seo Joo-Heon was sure that Pandora trusted the TBM group very much, and with that, they would at least survive the initial inspection. Even though Pandora had the King of Detection, but Seo Joo-Heon was sure that they would not check their own partner TBM. Julian also agreed with the reasonable reason owned by Seo Joo-Heon, but he still couldn't understand why it had to be TBM out of the many teams trusted by Pandora. Another reason was because a while ago TBM suffered heavy losses, and some of their assets had also been lost due to the boycott carried out by the community, and even many of their staff had resigned. And for that reason, Seo Joo-Heon was sure that their plan would succeed, because he knew that TBM was now still in a state of loss due to a shortage of workers. Seo caught the meaning of Seo Joo-Heon's explanation. Seo Joo-Heon confirmed Seo's opinion because now she was sure that TBM at this time would recruit anyone who wanted to work with them to conquer the tomb. Seo Joo-Heon tried to convince Julian with this reason and plan. And Seo Joo-Heon also intends to destroy CEO Kwon again while this mission is running. Although they all initially said their disapproval, but after hearing the explanation from Seo Joo-Heon, they all agreed. And Seo Joo-Heon has also told Yoo Ji-ha, who just arrived, and got a surprised reaction from Yoo Ji-ha, who had to deal with TBM again. Yoo Ji-ha protested, and he didn't understand why Seo Joo-Heon had to be so mean to TBM. After that, Seo Joo-Heon gave a new task to Yoo Ji-ha to make Seo Joo-Heon, Seo and Julian a disguise, because now only the three of them would go on this mission because Yoo Ji-ha had to focus on making his disguise safe. Although Yoo Ji-ha seemed to protest to Seo Joo-Heon, who kept giving him tasks, but Seo Joo-Heon ignored him because this time Yoo Ji-ha only needed to work from home to make sure his disguise was safe. Unable to contain his frustration anymore, Yoo Ji-ha finally left, but Seo Joo-Heon ignored it and instead gave Yoo Ji-ha a deadline to do it within 2 days. And after resting for about an hour, Yoo Ji-ha finally did Seo Joo-Heon's order and managed to finish it in less than 2 days. Seo Joo-Heon disguised himself as a young man named Han Ji-sang, while Julian disguised himself as someone by the name of James and Seol-ah disguised herself as Linwin. After finishing with the disguise of the Seo Joo-Heon team, the three of them immediately left to head to the TBM building to register themselves. The registration process for the three of them went smoothly because they were easy requirements for them, namely only the ability to use relics. After a while waiting for the three of them to get a message on their cell phones saying that they had been accepted as part of TBM, and with this, their team was now formed under the auspices of TBM. Although Seo Joo-Heon admitted that all this felt strange because they had to go back to work for TBM. The disguised Seo Joo-Heon was seen listening to some guidance from the host up ahead, who said that their team would be departing for France as soon as they finished their training. The host still sounded fired up about the new workers from TBM, but Seo Joo-Heon seemed to take it for granted because he knew very well what TBM was really like. But Seo Joo-Heon didn't mind that because he could leave for France as soon as this was over, and the day came when they would leave for France. Yoo Ji-ha had warned them beforehand about the duration of the disguise that would last as long as they were undercover. Yoo Ji-ha asked the three of them to leave the tomb as soon as the three of them were done with their duties. Yoo Ji-ha also gave another warning about the three of them not getting hurt because it would reduce the duration of the disguise, and if they were hurt badly then the disguise effect would just disappear in an instant. Yoo Ji-ha was very annoyed with Seo Joo-Heon, who kept protesting him because of the many weaknesses in their disguises, but it made Yoo Ji-ha even more angry because he was only given a little time to solve it all. And at this time, the conditions in front of the entrance to the Tomb of Pride were very chaotic, with several attacks that managed to expel the various teams there. Meanwhile, Yoon Si-woo, who was watching from a distance, was a little upset that they seemed to be feeling again this time. Several members of the team were trapped inside the tomb, and several others were badly injured trying to get out of the tomb. But Yoon Si-woo didn't mind that because at least they didn't have any other competitors in the same tomb as them right now. But one of the people there said that Yoon Si-woo's assumption was because of a rumor that was circulating. A rumor that Seo Joo-Heon was hiding somewhere around this tomb, and Yoon Si-woo managed to be surprised to hear it. The woman then explained that Seo Joo-Heon was indeed late now, but they didn't know what would happen next. Yoon Si-woo was even more shocked and disbelieved when he heard that Seo Joo-Heon was rumored to be disguised as one of the TBM members who was now with him. Yoon Si-woo was angry at the woman, but it seemed that the woman had a logical reason, because until now TBM was still opening job vacancies even though they were in a very bad situation. Yoon Si-woo did not accept it, but the woman still said that TBM might have made a mistake and let Seo Joo-Heon, who was undercover, enter and become part of the TBM team. But because Yoon Si-woo was a stubborn person, he ignored the woman's words and said that TBM had not made a mistake and Seo Joo-Heon would not succeed in getting into TBM. Meanwhile, at the place where the TBM group was headquartered, Yoon Si-woo was seen walking towards several guards who greeted him there. At first, Yoon Si-woo just wanted to check the situation in the place, and he smiled happily because everything was fine and there was no sign of Seo Joo-Heon being there now. because he thought it was almost impossible that Seo Joo-Heon would be here now. But unfortunately, Yoon Si-woo's assumption was incorrect because now Seo Joo-Heon managed to disguise himself as part of the TBM team. And with that, one of the officials there said if there were no more problems then they were allowed to join their respective teams now. A finger was seen pressing Seo Joo-Heon's shoulder and asking for her attention. After Seo Joo-Heon turned around, she saw Julian, who gave her something. A shirt button given by Julian. But it seems that it is not an ordinary shirt button, because now they can communicate using the button. The button is a relic that allows them to communicate with each other through telepathy. Seo Joo-Heon smiled and slightly praised Julian for doing a good job. Although now the three of them were in the middle of the enemy base, it seemed that Seo Joo-Heon could not wait to see what he could do to create chaos and harm to TBM and CEO Kwon. In a place of commerce owned by TBM, Julian, who was disguised as James, worked normally without inviting suspicion from his superiors. Even his superiors praised the performance of Julian, who was very good to be classified as someone who had just worked there. Julian looked at his boss, who was still talking about him, and it seemed that without the two of them realizing, Julian was eavesdropping on their conversation and trying to find a lot of information from the two of them. After a while, Julian came out and greeted Seo-Ah, who was disguised as Linwin. They both seemed to be talking about their work, which seemed to be going well. But Linwin started talking about the rumors circulating about the three of them. Because he had seen Yoon Si-woo several times, who visited this place, because he heard rumors about Seo Joo-Heon disguised as one of the new TBM members. And it turned out that Julian had also heard the same thing with Seo-Ah, while he was here, making Seo-Ah even more doubtful if their cover would be blown. When Julian was about to continue his words, he heard someone who walked past them and started talking about Seo Joo-Heon. The person who had just passed by even mocked Seo Joo-Heon, who only dared to hide like a rat and make everyone there inconvenienced. Hearing that, of course, made Seo-Ah furious, because that person had dared to mock Seo Joo-Heon, but quickly Julian stopped him, because he didn't want any unnecessary problems to happen just because of Seola's anger, and it also seemed that Seo Joo-Heon, who was disguised well, did not care about it all. But it looks like Seo Joo-Heon doesn't want to stay silent, because now it looks like Seo Joo-Heon is moving his hands skillfully and moving behind the bodies of the people there. Apparently Seo Joo-Heon is stealing relics that are in other people's hands quickly and undetected. And after he managed to take all the relics, Seo Joo-Heon just walked casually, leaving the scene, and people who were starting to get confused because their relics had been stolen. While people were panicking, the perpetrator Seo Joo-Heon just smiled happily and kept the stolen relic. Even Julian, who saw it all, could only gape and did not know what to say. Julian immediately contacted Seo Joo-Heon via telepathy and scolded Seo Joo-Heon, who had stolen the relic and made a mess there. Seo Joo-Heon seemed not to feel guilty at all, even though he had stolen 100 relics from those people. Seo Joo-Heon ignored the words of Julian and just walked casually towards a place. Seo Joo-Heon began to put the relics in his bag and began to separate the relics he could use from the useless ones. And suddenly Seo Joo-Heon shouted that she found all the missing relics and acted as someone who didn't know anything. Then Seo Joo-Heon said that she found the relics in Yoon Si-woo's locker, and it managed to attract the attention of many people. Everyone there became furious, while the person who was accused of not knowing anything could only be confused. Everything became chaotic, and they blamed Yoon Si-woo for stealing all of their relics. Yoon Si-woo tried to deny it, but he couldn't do much because he had seen the relic in his bag. Someone there even dared to pull the collar of Yoon Si-woo and started blaming him. It turned out that the person was Seung-woo, who suddenly came because he saw the mess made by the people there. At a time like that, Yoon Si-woo was angry because he felt he had been framed and instead blamed Yang Chen, who had just arrived there. It certainly made Yang Chen furious, and they began to fight between each other, blaming each other. Meanwhile, Seo Joo-Heon, who was the main perpetrator, just smiled happily, and he reported the incident through his telepathy with Julian. Seo Joo-Heon deliberately arranged all this because he knew the relationship between Yoon Si-woo and Yang Chen was not very good and ended in chaos where people there began to hit each other and fight, while the three of them who saw it were just silent seeing everyone fighting. Julian couldn't even think why Seo Joo-Heon had to do all that. Because from the beginning their goal was only to conquer the tomb and take the relic in it, not to look for problems like this. Seo Joo-Heon explained that destroying the relationship between TBM members was very important. Besides that, Seo Joo-Heon also had another reason why she had to do all this, which was to have fun. But the fun did not last long when she heard the sound of someone entering the room. It turned out that the king of detection was in the room along with his subordinates. Seung-woo, who saw that, asked the reason why the woman had to come into the room at such a time, and it turned out that the king of detection came with the reason. If he had heard rumors about the existence of Seo Joo-Heon in this camp among other TBM employees, the woman even mentioned Yoon Si-woo's behavior, which was too excessive when asked about Seo Joo-Heon. Seung-woo just glanced sharply at Yoon Si-woo because again and again the man was making unnecessary trouble. Yoon Si-woo, who didn't want to be blamed, started to be evasive and blamed Seung-woo for not believing them. But the blonde woman asked why Yoon Si-woo had to overreact if what was said was just a rumor. And with all the problems that managed to make the king of detection suspicious of TBM and thought that they had collaborated with Seo Joo-Heon, Yang Chen, who was furious at being suspected like that, said that TBM had no reason to work with Seo Joo-Heon because from the beginning Seo Joo-Heon was the one who got them all in trouble. Seung-woo stopped the argument and accepted the woman's agreement to conduct an examination of all TBM members, but Seung-woo did not just accept the woman's request and made an offer where the woman would pay a large fee if Seo Joo-Heon was not found. And of course, the woman accepted Seung-woo's offer, and with that, the examination was carried out. Everyone there was asked to gather and they would all be thoroughly examined by the king of detection. Meanwhile, Seo Joo-Heon there was a little worried because he did not expect if TBM would act this quickly. Shortly after that, the king of detection used his power to search for Seo Joo-Heon by dividing people there into groups. After his power was used, everyone there experienced an attack that hurt their heads. Even Seo Joo-Heon was a little horrified to see everyone there screaming in pain. Seo didn't understand what relic the woman was using. Even Seo Joo-Heon didn't know about it, but it was certain that the relic was very dangerous. Seo Joo-Heon realized how powerful the relic was, and she assumed that it was a new type of relic. The woman seemed to be smiling because she didn't find Seo Joo-Heon, and it managed to make Seung-woo angry because the woman had injured some of his members. Even now, Seung-woo was furious because the woman underestimated the effect it had on his members so that none of them were able to stand. The woman continued to use her power, and it managed to make Julian and Seo a little horrified. Seo Joo-Heon felt a little lucky because his group was the last group, but now he was a little worried. Seo Joo-Heon began to think of ways to escape the power of the king of detection. The woman slowly walked towards the group where Seo Joo-Heon and his team were. The woman began to prepare her power, but this time with greater intensity because she was sure that she would find Seo Joo-Heon in the last group. The sight of the king of detection who began to use his power made Seo Joo-Heon a little anxious there. Did Seo Joo-Heon manage to escape the inspection? What will Seo Joo-Heon do?